The drone's camera captures something impossible. 6 sleeping bags arranged in a perfect circle around a campfire that's been burning for 29 years. Its flames dancing against the Wyoming wilderness as if time itself forgot to move forward. 3 days earlier, Marcus Chun adjusts the focus on his high-end drone controller, his weathered fingers surprisingly steady despite the coffee tremor that's plagued him since his divorce. The October morning air bites at his cheeks as he stands on the ridge overlooking Devil's Canyon, a sprawling wilderness area that's become his obsession and his penance. Just another grid search, he mutters to himself, the same mantra he's repeated every weekend for the past 18 months. Below him, the canyon stretches for miles, its rocky outcroppings and dense pine forests concealing secrets that have haunted 3 families since 1995. The drone lifts off with a soft whir, its camera sweeping across terrain that's been searched by hundreds of volunteers, park rangers, and private investigators. Marcus watches the live feed on his tablet, methodically covering sectors he's mapped and remapped dozens of times. He's not officially part of any search team anymore, hasn't been since the incident that cost him his job with the National Park Service. But guilt doesn't follow bureaucratic schedules. His radio crackles. "Marcus, you out there again?" The voice belongs to Sarah Whitmore, one of the few park rangers who still talks to him. "Just exercising my right to fly a drone, unrestricted airspace," Marcus replies, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Your right is going to get you arrested if Sheriff Kowalski catches you nosing around the restricted zones again." Marcus's jaw tightens. The restricted zones, that's where the real answers lie, he's certain. But after his unauthorized investigation 18 months ago, he's been banned from accessing those areas. The official reason was insubordination. The real reason was that he'd gotten too close to something the authorities didn't want uncovered. "I'm staying legal today," he says, though his fingers are already guiding the drone toward the boundary line. The feed shows the familiar landscape, weathered rock formations, clusters of aspen trees beginning their autumn transformation, and the occasional elk trail. Then something catches his eye, a thin column of smoke rising from a valley he's never been able to access before, too deep and treacherous for ground teams. Marcus's pulse quickens. Smoke means fire. Fire means people. And people in this particular stretch of wilderness, especially this time of year, means something's very wrong. He adjusts the drone's altitude, bringing it lower for a better view. The smoke is definitely coming from the valley floor, obscured by a canopy of pine trees. As the drone descends through a gap in the branches, Marcus's breath catches in his throat. There, in a small clearing beside a crystal-clear stream, sits a campsite that looks like it was set up yesterday. 6 sleeping bags arranged in a perfect circle around a crackling campfire. Backpacks leaning against trees, their bright colors unfaded. A camp stove sits on a flat rock, and what appears to be a pot of water steams gently beside it. Marcus blinks hard, certain he's seeing things. But the image remains unchanged on his screen. A pristine campsite in the middle of nowhere, with no visible occupants. His hands shake as he adjusts the camera angle, zooming in on details that make his chest constrict. One of the sleeping bags powder blue, with darker blue trim matches. The description from a missing persons report he's memorized. The yellow backpack propped against a pine tree bears the same brand logo that one of the families mentioned in their countless interviews. "No way," Marcus whispers, his voice barely audible over the wind. "No fucking way." He guides the drone in a slow circle around the campsite, documenting everything. The sleeping bags appear to be high-quality models, the kind serious hikers use. The backpacks are substantial, built for multi-day trips. Everything looks cared for, organized, as if the campers just stepped away for a morning hike. But Marcus knows better. He knows this campsite has been here, untouched and undisturbed, for 29 years. Because those sleeping bags, those backpacks, That particular configuration of gear, it all matches the inventory from a Boy Scout expedition that vanished without a trace in October 1995. 6 young scouts, ages 14 to 16, along with their scout leader, disappeared on what should have been a routine 3-day wilderness trip. The largest search and rescue operation in Wyoming's history found nothing. Not a scrap of fabric, not a footprint, not even a candy wrapper. Until now. Marcus's radio crackles again. "Marcus, I've got Sheriff Kowalski on the line. He wants to know your current position." Marcus glances at his GPS coordinates, then at the live feed from his drone. The campfire burns merrily in the center of the circle, its flames reaching toward the October sky as if fueled by an invisible hand. Steam rises from the pot beside the camp stove. Everything looks fresh, recent, impossible. "Tell him I'm headed home," Marcus says, his voice hoarse with shock and adrenaline. But he's not going home. Not yet. Because after 29 years of wondering what happened to those 6 boys and their leader, Marcus Chen has finally found their camp. And somehow, impossibly, it's exactly as they left it, as if they're planning to come back any minute. Marcus forces himself to breathe slowly as he saves the drone footage to 3 separate memory cards. His hands won't stop shaking. 29 years in search and rescue, 18 months of unofficial investigation, and nothing, absolutely nothing, has prepared him for this moment. He pulls out his phone and scrolls to a contact he hasn't called in 6 months. Detective Lisa Hartwell, the only law enforcement officer who still believes the 1995 disappearance deserves active investigation. Their last conversation ended badly, with Lisa warning him that his obsession was destroying what remained of his career and his life. The phone rings 4 times before her familiar voice answers. "Chun, if this is about your conspiracy theories again." "Lisa, I found them." Silence stretches between them, broken only by the wind whistling through the canyon. "Found who?" Her voice is careful now, professional. "The Boy Scout camp. From 95. It's still there, Lisa. The whole damn site, exactly like they left it." "Marcus." Lisa's tone shifts to the gentle patience she might use with a mental health crisis. "We've been through this. The search teams covered every inch of that area. There's nothing. The campfire is still burning." The words hang in the air like a physical presence. Marcus can hear Lisa's breathing change on the other end of the line. "That's impossible. I have video. High definition, GP sagged, time-stamped. Video. 6 sleeping bags in a circle, backpacks that match the missing person's inventory, and a fire that's been burning for 29 fucking years." Another long pause. When Lisa speaks again, her voice is barely above a whisper. "Where?" Marcus rattles off the coordinates, his eyes never leaving the drone feed. The campsite remains perfectly still, waiting. It's in Sector 7G, about 2 miles past the restricted boundary. The valley we could never access because of the terrain. "Marcus, listen to me very carefully. Do not approach that site. Do not tell anyone else about this. And for God's sake, do not post anything on social media. I'm 40 minutes out." The line goes dead. Marcus stares at his phone, then back at the tablet screen. In the clearing below, something moves. His heart stutters as a figure emerges from behind one of the larger pine trees. Tall, wearing what appears to be a scout leader's uniform, the man moves with unhurried purpose toward the campfire. Marcus zooms in frantically, but the image quality pixelates as he pushes the camera to its limits. The figure crouches beside the fire, apparently adding wood from a neat stack Marcus hadn't noticed before. Steam continues to rise from the pot on the camp stove. Everything looks normal, routine, as if this is just another morning at summer camp. Except the man should be 53 years old now. And from what Marcus can see through the fuzzy zoom, the figure beside the fire looks exactly like the 24-year-old scout leader from the missing persons photos. David Brennan. Eagle Scout, outdoor education major, beloved by every kid he mentored. Last seen on October 15, 1995, leading 6 teenage boys into Devil's Canyon for what should have been an easy weekend camping trip. Marcus's radio squawks, making him jump. All units, this is dispatch. We have reports of unauthorized drone activity in restricted wilderness areas. Any units available to respond? Marcus quickly switches off his radio and begins the process. Off recalling his drone. He needs to get it back before someone spots it, but he can't tear his eyes away from the figure by the campfire. The man straightens up, and for a moment, Marcus could swear he's looking directly at the drone camera. Then the figure raises one hand in what might be a wave. The blood drains from Marcus's face. He's been spotted. After 29 years of perfect concealment, whatever's happening in that valley has been discovered, and whoever or whatever is down there knows it. Marcus fumbles with the controller, bringing the drone up and away from the campsite as quickly as possible. As it gains altitude, he risks one last look at the feed. The campsite sits peacefully in its clearing, the fire burning steadily, steam rising from the camp stove. But the figure is gone, vanished as suddenly as it appeared. By the time Marcus lands the drone and packs his equipment, his shirt is soaked with sweat. Despite the October chill, his mind races with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Collective hallucination. Government cover-up. Witness protection gone wrong. Time distortion. None of them make sense, but then again, neither. Does a campfire that's been burning for 3 decades. He's halfway back to his truck when he hears it. The distant sound of laughter, young and carefree, echoing up from the canyon below. The kind of laughter that belongs around a campfire, sharing ghost stories and toasted marshmallows under a canopy of stars. Marcus breaks into a run. 20 minutes later, Detective Lisa Hartwell's SUV pulls up beside his truck in the canyon parking area. She emerges wearing hiking gear and an expression that's equal parts skepticism and hope. At 42, Lisa has the weathered look of someone who's seen too much and believes in too little, but her eyes still hold the spark that made her a good detective before budget cuts and political pressure relegated her to cold cases. "Show me," she says without preamble. Marcus hands her the tablet, the drone footage already queued up. Lisa watches in silence, her expression gradually shifting from professional skepticism to genuine shock. When the footage shows the figure by the campfire, she rewinds it 3 times. "Jesus Christ, Marcus, what the hell is this?" "That's what I was hoping you'd tell me." Lisa looks up from the tablet, studying Marcus's face. "You realize what this means if it's real? The jurisdictional nightmare, the media circus, the families." She trails off, but Marcus can fill in the blanks. 3 families who've spent 29 years grieving. 3 families who've built memorials and held annual remembrance services and somehow found ways to move forward with their lives. "The Kowalski boys' parents are still alive," Lisa says. Quietly. "Tom and Marie, they're in their 70s now. But they never gave up hope that Jimmy might still be out there somewhere." Marcus nods. He knows the families by heart, has attended their remembrance gatherings, has seen the way hope and grief war in their eyes every October. Jimmy Kowalski, 16 years old, quarterback on the JV football team. Ryan Martinez, 15, honor roll student who wanted to be a marine biologist. The twins, Alex and Aaron Webb, 14, inseparable since birth. Sam Chen, no relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname 14, quiet kid who loved astronomy. And Danny Foster, the youngest at 14, whose parents divorced 2 years after his disappearance. "What's our next move?" Marcus asks. Lisa stares back at the tablet screen, where the campfire burns eternal in its circle of sleeping bags. "We go down there, tonight, off the books, no backup, no official report until we know what we're dealing with." Marcus feels a chill that has nothing to do with the October air. And if we find them? If they're really there, unchanged after 29 years? Lisa doesn't answer immediately. When she finally speaks, her voice carries the weight of every unsolved case, every family she's failed to give closure. Then we figure out how to explain the impossible. The descent into Devil's Canyon begins at 11:47 p.m. under a sliver of moon that provides just enough light to be treacherous. Marcus leads the way, his headlamp cutting a narrow beam through the darkness ahead of Lisa's boots. They've been hiking for 43 minutes, following game trails and Marcus's GPS coordinates towards something that shouldn't exist. How much further? Lisa whispers, though there's no logical reason to keep quiet. The nearest road is 6 miles away, and they haven't seen another human being since leaving the parking area. Another half-mile, then we descend into the valley. Marcus pauses to check his GPS, the device's blue glow harsh against his weathered face. "Lisa, I need to tell you something before we get there." She stops behind him, adjusting the weight of her pack. "What?" "This afternoon, after I called you, I heard something. Voices, laughter, coming from down there." Lisa's jaw tightens. "You didn't mention that on the phone." "Because I wasn't sure if I imagined it. But the more I think about it, ... Marcus shakes his head. It sounded like kids. Happy kids. They resume walking in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The terrain grows increasingly treacherous as they approach the valley's edge. Loose rock and hidden roots grab at their feet, and more than once Marcus has to catch Lisa's arm to prevent a fall. As they crest the final ridge, the valley spreads below them like a secret kept by the earth itself. Moonlight filters through the pine canopy, creating a patchwork of silver and black. And there, in a clearing beside the stream, a warm orange glow flickers between the trees. "Holy shit," Lisa breathes. The fire really is still burning. Marcus pulls out his binoculars, adjusting the focus. The campsite looks exactly as it did in the drone footage. 6 sleeping bags arranged in a perfect circle, backpacks leaning against trees, the camp stove with its steaming pot. But now in the darkness, details emerge that the afternoon light had hidden. "There are shadows," Marcus says, handing Lisa the binoculars. "Moving shadows around the fire." Lisa peers through the lenses, her breathing sharp and controlled. After a long moment, she lowers them. 6 shadows. Small ones, kid-sized. They begin the descent into the valley, using their hands as much as their feet to navigate the steep slope. 20 minutes later, they reach the valley floor, the sound of the stream masking their approach. The campfire's glow is visible through the trees now, maybe 200 yards away. Lisa pulls out her service weapon, checking the chamber out of habit rather than necessity. "Okay, here's how we do this. We observe first from a distance. We document everything. And we don't make contact unless absolutely necessary." Marcus nods, though part of him, the part that's been searching for answers for 29 years, wants to walk straight into that clearing and demand explanations. They move carefully through the trees, using the stream's babble to cover the sound of their footsteps. As they get closer, voices become audible over the crackling fire. Young voices speaking in the casual cadence of teenagers sharing stories. Around a campfire. ... And then Mr. Brennan said we could cook s'mores if we got the tent set up before dark. Did you bring the chocolate? Please tell me someone remembered chocolate. Jimmy's got it in his pack, don't you, Jimmy? Lisa and Marcus exchange glances. Jimmy Kowalski, the 16-year-old quarterback who disappeared 29 years ago. They reach the edge of the clearing and crouch behind a fallen log, close enough now to see the campsite clearly. 6 teenagers sit around the fire, their faces illuminated by the orange glow. They wear clothes that look freshly pressed despite a day of hiking, scout uniforms with merit badges, hiking boots that show wear but no real age, backpacks that Should be sun-faded and weather-beaten, but look like they came straight from the store. Marcus recognizes them immediately from the missing persons photos. Jimmy Kowalski, broad-shouldered and confident, roasting a marshmallow on a long stick. Ryan Martinez, smaller and more serious, studying what appears to be a field guide in the firelight. The Webb twins, Alex and Aaron, practically mirror images with their matching grins and tousled hair. Sam Chun, quiet and thoughtful, looking up at the stars. And Danny Foster, the youngest, animated as he tells a story that has the others laughing. They look exactly as they did in 1995, not a day older. "This is impossible," Lisa whispers, voice barely audible even to Marcus. That's when they notice the seventh figure. David Brennan sits slightly apart from the boys, close enough to supervise but far enough to give them space. At 24, he had been young for a scout leader, chosen as much for his ability to connect with teenagers as for his wilderness skills. Now 29 years later, he looks exactly the same. Same dark hair, same easy smile, same way of holding himself that suggested both authority and approachability. He's reading a paperback novel by firelight, occasionally glancing up to check on his charges. Everything about the scene suggests a normal camping trip, the kind of wholesome outdoor experience that builds character and creates lasting memories. Except for the impossible passage of time. Marcus starts to stand, drawn by an impulse he can't name, but Lisa grabs his arm. "Wait," she mouths. David Brennan looks up from his book, scanning the tree line as if he's heard something. His gaze seems to pass right over their hiding spot, but Marcus feels exposed nonetheless. After a moment, the scout leader returns to his reading. "Okay, boys," David says, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. 15 more minutes, then it's time to bank the fire and get some sleep. We've got a long hike tomorrow." A chorus of good-natured protests rises from the circle, but the boys begin the familiar ritual of finishing their snacks and preparing for bed. Marcus watches, transfixed, as they move through routines that should feel nostalgic, but instead feel immediate and present. Jimmy Kowalski stands and stretches, looking every inch the athlete he was. "Mr. Brennan, what time are we breaking camp tomorrow?" "8 sharp. We want to be on the trail before it gets too warm, tomorrow." Marcus feels a chill that has nothing to do with the October night. These kids are making plans for tomorrow, 29 years after they vanished without a trace. That's when Marcus notices something that makes his blood freeze. Propped against one of the backpacks, barely visible in the firelight, is a newspaper. Even from this distance, he can make out the date on the masthead. October 16th, 1995, the day after they disappeared. Lisa sees it too. Her grip on his arm tightens as she pulls him back deeper into the trees. They retreat 50 yards before she trusts herself to speak. "Marcus, we need to call this in, right now." "Call it in?" "What exactly are we going to tell them?" "I don't know, but this is way beyond our pay grade. This is..." She struggles for words. "This is something that needs federal involvement, scientists, people who understand things we don't." Marcus looks back toward the campfire's glow, visible through the trees. What if calling it in destroys whatever this is? What if the moment we bring in outside interference, they disappear again? For another 29 years? Lisa doesn't answer, but Marcus can see the conflict in her face. The detective in her wants to follow protocol, call for backup, document everything properly. But the human being in her, the part that's carried the weight of this unsolved case for years, recognizes that they're standing at the edge of something unprecedented. From the clearing comes the sound of zippers and rustling fabric as the boys settle into their sleeping bags. David Brennan's voice carries one last time. "Sweet dreams, gentlemen. Tomorrow's going to be another beautiful day." The fire continues to burn, steady and eternal, as if time itself has forgotten to move forward in this hidden valley. Lisa and Marcus establish an observation post 30 yards from the clearing, concealed behind a cluster of boulders that provide both cover and a clear view of the campsite. They take turns with the binoculars, documenting everything in Lisa's field notebook with the methodical precision of a police investigation. 12:47 a.m. All subjects appear to be sleeping. Fire continues burning at consistent intensity. No visible fuel source. 1:15 a.m. Subject D. Brennan observed checking perimeter of camp. Movements appear routine. No indication of awareness of observation. 1:23 a.m. Anomalous sound detected. Subject Ryan Martinez speaking in sleep. Words indistinct, but tone suggests distress. At 1:31 a.m., something changes. Ryan Martinez sits up abruptly in his sleeping bag, his eyes wide and reflecting the firelight. Even from their concealed position, Marcus can see the boy's chest rising and falling rapidly, the universal signs of someone waking from a nightmare. "Mr. Brennan?" Ryan's voice carries clearly across the quiet clearing. David Brennan emerges from his own sleeping bag with the practiced efficiency of an experienced outdoorsman. "What is it, Ryan? Bad dream?" I think so. But it felt so real." Ryan runs his hands through his hair, a gesture that strikes Marcus as heartbreakingly young. "I dreamed we were lost. For years and years. And our families were looking for U.S., but we couldn't find our way home." David moves closer to Ryan's sleeping bag, settling cross-legged beside him. "Dreams can feel very real out here. Something about being in the wilderness makes our minds more active at night. But Mr. Brennan, what if it wasn't a dream? What if ... Ryan trails off, looking around the clearing as if seeing it for the first time. "What day is it?" David's pause is so brief that Marcus might have imagined it. "October 16th, 1995. We're on day 2 of our camping trip, remember?" "Right, of course." Ryan nods, but uncertainty flickers across his features. "It's just, sometimes I feel like I'm forgetting something important. Like there's something I should remember, but can't quite reach it." Lisa scribbles frantically. In her notebook, her handwriting barely legible in the darkness. Beside her, Marcus feels his heart hammering against his ribs. The boy is having breakthrough moments, glimpses of the real timeline bleeding through whatever's keeping them locked in this temporal loop. "That's normal too," David says, his voice gentle but firm. "Being in nature can make our minds work differently. Why don't you try to get some more sleep? We have a big day of hiking tomorrow." Ryan lies back down, but Marcus can see he remains awake, staring up at the stars. After several minutes, David returns to his own sleeping bag, but he doesn't close his eyes. Instead, he lies on his side, watching Ryan with an expression that Marcus can't quite interpret. 2:47 a.m. Subject R. Martinez experiencing temporal awareness episodes. Subject D. Brennan displays possible conscious knowledge of situation. "Lisa," Marcus whispers, so quietly he's not sure she can hear him. "I think the leader knows." Before Lisa can respond, her radio crackles to life. She fumbles for the volume control, but not before a voice cuts through the night air. "Detective Hartwell, this is Sheriff Kowalski. Please respond with your current location." In the clearing, every head turns toward their hiding spot. David Brennan sits up slowly, his expression alert and focused. The boys emerge from their sleeping bags like soldiers responding to reveille, moving with coordinated precision. That seems at odds with their teenage appearances. "Shit," Lisa breathes, switching off the radio completely. "We need to move," Marcus says, but before they can retreat, a voice calls out across the clearing. "It's okay," David Brennan says, standing in, facing their direction. "We know you're there. We've been waiting for you." Marcus feels Lisa's hand close around his wrist, her grip tight enough to leave marks. The impossibility of the situation crashes over them both. They've been discovered by people who shouldn't exist, in a place that defies explanation, having a conversation that challenges everything they understand about reality. We're not going to hurt you, David continues, his voice carrying the same calm authority Marcus remembers from the testimonials given by parents and other scout leaders. In fact, we've been hoping someone would find us. It's been difficult to maintain this alone. The boys stand behind their leader, arranged in the same formation they'd maintained around the fire. But their expressions are different now, less carefree, more aware. Jimmy Kowalski looks directly at Marcus with eyes that hold far more knowledge than any 16-year-old should possess. "Detective Hartwell," Jimmy calls out, and Lisa's sharp intake of breath is audible. "Mr. Chun, please come forward. We have a lot to explain, and not much time." Lisa looks at Marcus, her training warring with the surreal nature of their situation. Standard protocol says they should retreat, call for backup, establish a perimeter. But standard protocol doesn't account for missing persons who haven't aged in 29 years. "How do they know our names?" Lisa whispers. Marcus stands slowly, his joints protesting after hours of crouching. Only one way to find out. They emerge from their hiding spot, hands visible, moving with the careful deliberation of people approaching a dangerous animal. As they near the circle of firelight, details become clearer and more disturbing. The boys' clothes aren't just well preserved, they're immaculate, as if they were freshly laundered this morning. Their skin has the healthy glow of teenagers, at peak physical condition, showing no signs of exposure or malnutrition. Even their hair looks recently cut. "Please sit." David gestures to two spots near the fire. "I know this must be confusing." Lisa remains standing, her hand resting on her service weapon. "I'm Detective Lisa Hartwell, Sweetwater County Sheriff's Department. This is Marcus Chun, former Park Service. We need you to identify yourselves." A ripple of what might be amusement passes through the group. Ryan Martinez steps forward. "Detective Hartwell, you know who we are. You've been carrying our case files for the past 8 years. My name is Ryan Martinez. I was 15 years old when we disappeared on October 15, 1995. Was?" Marcus catches the past tense. "That's the difficult part to explain," David says. "Time works differently here. We've experienced every day since our disappearance, but we've also remained frozen at the moment of our arrival. We're caught between what was and what is." Jimmy Kowalski moves closer to the fire, his young face serious in the orange light. "Mr. Chun, you've been searching for us for 18 months. Flying your drone over the restricted areas, filing reports that no one would take seriously. We've been watching you." Marcus feels the ground shifting beneath his understanding of reality. "Watching me? How?" "The same way we've been watching our families," Sam Chun says quietly. "The same way we've seen every search party, every memorial service, every time someone's given up hope." Danny Foster, the youngest, looks directly at Lisa with eyes that hold decades of accumulated sorrow. "Detective Hartwell, my parents divorced because of my disappearance. My father moved to Colorado. My mother remarried but kept my last name. She visits my memorial stone every year on my birthday." Lisa's professional composure cracks. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because we're still connected to the world we left behind," David explains. "We can see it, sometimes influence it in small ways, but we can't return to it. We've been prisoners of this moment for 29 years. Aaron Webb speaks for the first time, his voice identical to his twins, but carrying a weight that seems impossible for a 14-year-old. "Until now, something's changed. The barriers are weakening. For the first time since we arrived here, people can find us." "What barriers?" Marcus demands. "What happened to you? Where have you been?" David Brennan looks around at his charges. These boys who should be middle-aged men by now, and Marcus sees something break behind his eyes. "We never left the canyon," David says simply. We've been here the entire time, living the same 3 days over and over, watching the world change around us while we remain frozen. But now the loop is destabilizing, and if we can't find a way out soon. He doesn't finish the sentence, but the implication hangs in the air like smoke from their eternal fire. Show them, Jimmy Kowalski says, his voice carrying an authority that seems wrong coming from a 16-year-old body. They need to understand what we're dealing with. David Brennan nods grimly and walks to the edge of the clearing. He picks up a handful of small stones and throws them into the darkness beyond the firelight. Marcus and Lisa watch as the stones arc through the air, then simply stop, suspended in mid-flight, as if they've hit an invisible wall. The barrier, David explains. It extends roughly 50 yards in every direction from our campsite. We've tested it thousands of times over the years. Nothing we throw passes through. And if we try to walk beyond it, he demonstrates, approaching the spot where the stones hang frozen. As his foot crosses an invisible threshold, his entire body slows to a crawl, each movement taking enormous effort. After 3 labored steps, he turns and walks back to normal speed. Time dilates, Sam. Shun adds, his voice clinical despite his young appearance. Beyond the barrier, seconds become hours. We've tried to escape countless times, but we always end up back here, at this moment. October 16th, 1995. Lisa stares at the suspended stones, her detective's mind struggling to process the impossible. This defies every law of physics. Not every law, Ryan Martinez says. We've had 29 years to study our situation. Time isn't linear here. It's more like a whirlpool, with us trapped at the center. Marcus approaches the barrier cautiously, extending his hand toward where the stones hang motionless. His fingers pass through easily, but when he tries to grab one of the suspended rocks, his hand slows dramatically. He jerks it back, heart racing. You can pass through, Aaron Webb explains. But for us, trying to leave means experiencing every second of 29 years in the span of a few steps. The psychological trauma alone. We've lost members before, Alex Webb adds. Quietly, and the group falls silent. David's expression darkens. 3 years ago, local time, Ryan tried to push through. He made it about 10 yards before the temporal pressure became too much. When he returned to the camp, he'd aged 15 years in minutes. It took weeks for the effect to reverse itself. Lisa pulls out her notebook, scribbling frantically. Reverse itself? You mean he returned to his current appearance? The loop resets us, David confirms. Every 72 hours, we return to exactly how we were at the moment of our arrival. Physical injuries heal, aging reverses, memories complicate. Memories complicate? Marcus presses. Jimmy stands and walks to his backpack, retrieving what appears to be a journal. The pages are filled with writing in multiple hands, dates spanning decades. We have to write everything down. The reset doesn't just affect our bodies, it affects our minds. Without these records, we'd forget that time was passing at all. He hands the journal to Lisa, who flips through pages of documentation that read like a descent into madness. Detailed observations of the outside world, philosophical discussions about the nature of time, and increasingly desperate plans for escape. According to our calculations, Sam says, pointing to complex equations scrawled in the margins, we've experienced this same 3-day period roughly 3,500 times. But our awareness of the repetition only comes in waves. Sometimes we remember everything. Sometimes we're just 6 kids on a camping trip, completely unaware that we're trapped. What determines which state you're in? Lisa asks. External interference, David replies. When someone tries to find us, when the outside world pushes against the barrier, it destabilizes the loop temporarily. That's why Ryan had his breakthrough. Moment earlier, your presence is affecting the temporal field. Marcus studies the suspended stones, then looks back at the group. You said something's changed. That the barriers are weakening. For the past 6 months, the resets have been less complete, Danny Foster explains. We're retaining more memories between cycles. And for the first time since we arrived, outsiders have been able to detect us. Your drone footage yesterday. Jimmy adds, that should have been impossible. The temporal field should have hidden us completely. Lisa closes the journal, her expression grim. What happens if the barrier fails completely? The group exchanges glances, and Marcus sees fear in their young faces, real, adult fear trapped in teenage bodies. We don't know, David admits, but we have theories. The loop might collapse entirely, snapping us back to normal time all at once, 29 years of aging happening in seconds. Or, Sam continues, the temporal displacement might spread outward, affecting the surrounding area, possibly the entire region. A time anomaly that size could affect thousands of people, Ryan adds. Marcus feels a chill that has nothing to do with the October night. How long do we have? Based on the rate of deterioration, maybe days, perhaps hours. David looks around at his charges, these boys who've been trapped in childhood for 3 decades. We need to find a way out of here before the loop collapses on its own. That's when Lisa's radio crackles back to life, despite being switched off. Sheriff Kowalski's voice emerges from the speaker. But it sounds strange distorted, as if traveling through water. Detective Hartwell... location... immediate... federal. Containment. The signal breaks up, but the implications are clear. Someone else knows about the anomaly, and they're coming. Federal containment, Jimmy repeats, his young face pale. That doesn't sound good for any of us. David stands abruptly, scanning the tree line. They can't be allowed to turn this into a laboratory. We've been prisoners for 29 years. We won't become specimens. How long until they arrive? Aaron asks. Lisa checks her radio, but it's completely dead now. If they're mobilizing federal resources, maybe hours. Maybe less. Then we're out of time, David says. We need to attempt an escape now, while the barrier is unstable. But you said trying to leave could kill you, Marcus protests. Staying here definitely will, Sam replies. If federal agents arrive and establish containment protocols, we'll never have another chance. Ryan Martinez stands and begins gathering supplies from around the campsite. We've been planning for this possibility for years. Operation Homecoming, a coordinated attempt to break through the barrier using the temporal instability. It's never been tested, Danny warns. Because we've never had outside help before, Jimmy counters, looking directly at Marcus and Lisa. 2 people who can move freely through the barrier, who could potentially anchor us to normal time. Lisa shakes her head. We don't understand any of this. We could make things worse. Detective, David says, his voice carrying the authority of someone far older than 24. In a few hours, this place will be swarming with federal agents who see us as either threats to be contained or phenomena to be studied. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. As if summoned by his words, the sound of distant helicopters echoes across the canyon still miles away, but growing closer. The eternal campfire flickers for the first time in 29 years, its flames dancing wildly as temporal forces beyond human understanding begin to tear apart the fabric of this impossible prison. The helicopter sound grows steadily louder, as David spreads a hand-drawn map across a flat boulder near the fire. The paper looks ancient, but the ink is fresh, another impossibility in a night full of them. Operation Homecoming requires precise timing, David explains, his finger tracing routes marked in different colored inks. We've mapped the barrier's weak points over the years. There are 3 locations where the temporal field fluctuates most dramatically. Marcus studies the map, recognizing the topography despite the crude drawings. These coordinates ... 2 of them are in the restricted zones. The places I was banned from investigating. Not a coincidence, Sam Chun says grimly. The government's known something was wrong here for years. They just didn't know what. Jimmy Kowalski shoulders his backpack, the same bright yellow pack that appeared in missing persons reports 29 years ago. The plan is simple in concept, complex in execution. We need to reach the eastern barrier point before the federal teams arrive. If we can synchronize our exit attempt with external interference, we might be able to punch through, Ryan finishes. Lisa checks her watch. 3:17 a.m. How long to reach this eastern point? Under normal circumstances, 40 minutes, Aaron Webb replies. But circumstances stopped being normal here a long time ago. Alex Webb points to markings on the map that look like warning symbols. The closer we get to the barrier, the more unstable local time becomes. Minutes might stretch into hours, or compress into seconds. We have to move together, stay focused, and whatever happens, don't get separated. The helicopter sound intensifies, now accompanied by what sounds like multiple aircraft. Through the trees, Marcus catches glimpses of searchlights sweeping across the canyon's upper reaches. They're using thermal imaging, Lisa observes. Military-grade equipment. Which means they'll find us soon, David says, beginning to dismantle the camp with practiced efficiency. The boys move in coordination, each handling specific tasks they've clearly rehearsed countless times. Within minutes, the eternal campsite preserved, unchanged for nearly 3 decades, is reduced to scattered gear and a dying fire. The fire, Marcus realizes. It's going out. The temporal field is destabilizing faster than we projected, Sam explains, stamping out the last of the flames. Whatever's holding us here is losing power. As darkness closes around them, the world seems to shift. The stream's babble becomes a roar, then fades to a whisper. The wind picks up, dies away, reverses direction. Marcus feels his stomach lurch as gravity itself seems to fluctuate. Stay close, David warns, shouldering his pack. Time distortions can be disorienting. They begin moving through the forest, but immediately Marcus understands what the boys meant about unstable time. One moment they're walking at normal speed through moonlit trees. The next, everything slows to a crawl, each step taking enormous effort. Then suddenly they're moving so fast that the forest blurs around them. Focus on the person in front of you, Jimmy calls back, his voice sometimes normal, sometimes stretched and distorted. Don't try to understand what's happening, just follow. Lisa struggles beside Marcus, her breathing rapid and shallow. This is impossible, she gasps during a moment when time moves normally. People can't just exist outside of normal physics. Tell that to us, Danny Foster says from ahead of them. We've been living proof of the impossible for 29 years. They reach the first waypoint on David's map, a cluster of boulders marked with carved symbols that seem to shift and change when Marcus looks at them directly. The helicopter sounds are closer now, accompanied by the distant bark of search dogs. Federal teams are moving faster than expected, David observes, checking a compass that spins wildly before settling on a direction that definitely isn't magnetic north. We need to pick up the pace. How is this possible? Marcus asks. As they resume walking, how does someone just fall out of time? Ryan Martinez falls back to walk beside him, his young face serious in the erratic moonlight. We've had decades to piece it together. This canyon sits on a geological anomaly, some kind of natural temporal distortion. Native American legends talk about this place being where time sleeps, but legends don't create literal time loops, Lisa protests. No, Sam Chun agrees. But combined with specific conditions, solar activity, atmospheric pressure, maybe just bad luck, natural phenomena can become something else entirely. Aaron Webb points ahead to where the forest opens into a small meadow. We were in the wrong place at the wrong time. October 15, 1995, there was a massive solar storm. Largest geomagnetic disturbance in decades. The disturbance hit just as we were making camp, Alex adds. David was showing us how to read the stars when suddenly the sky lit up like daylight. Aurora activity at this latitude was unprecedented, David continues. The electromagnetic pulse interacted with whatever geological anomaly exists beneath this canyon. We were caught in the epicenter. They cross the meadow, and Marcus notices that their footsteps leave no marks in the soft earth, as if they're weaker. Not quite solid, not quite real. The helicopter searchlights sweep closer, and in their glare Marcus can see the meadow grass waving in slow motion, each blade moving independently of any wind. There, Jimmy points ahead to a steep slope covered in loose rock, the eastern barrier point. As they climb, the time distortions intensify. Marcus finds himself moving through moments where sound becomes color, where the texture of rock changes beneath his hands like flowing water. Beside him, Lisa stumbles and nearly falls as a wave of temporal displacement washes over them. "I can see them," Aaron says suddenly, pointing back toward the valley. "Federal agents. At least 12, moving in from 3 directions." Marcus turns, and through the shifting time field, he can make out figures in tactical gear, moving with military precision. They carry equipment he doesn't recognize, devices that seem to probe the air itself, reading measurements from instruments that look like nothing he's ever seen. "Temporal detection gear," David confirms grimly. "They're not just searching, they're mapping the anomaly." "Which means they know exactly what they're dealing with," Sam adds. They reach the slope's crest, and ahead of them lies a small depression. In the earth, perfectly circular, about 20 feet across. The air above it shimmers like heat waves, and Marcus can see the now familiar signs of the temporal barrier, subtle distortions that suggest the normal flow of time simply doesn't apply here. "This is it," David announces. "The weakest point. In our prison." Jimmy drops his pack and begins pulling out equipment, climbing rope, carabiners, and something that looks like a metal detector, but with readings that make no sense. The plan is to link ourselves together and attempt to push through as a unit. The rope should help us maintain cohesion if the time stream tries to separate us. "And if it doesn't work?" Lisa asks. The boys exchange glances, and Marcus sees the weight of 29 years of imprisonment in their young faces. "Then we'll have tried," David says simply. "After 3 decades of being trapped between moments, at least we'll have tried." That's when the first federal helicopter crests a ridge behind them, its searchlight cutting through the darkness like a sword. In its glare, Marcus can see repelling equipment being prepared, agents ready to deploy directly into the anomaly zone. "Now or never," Jimmy says, clipping the rope to his harness. The eternal Campfire may have died, but the prison that held 6 boys and their leader for 29 years is about to face its greatest test, and whatever happens next will determine whether they finally find their way home or disappear forever into the spaces between seconds. The federal helicopter hovers directly overhead, its rotor wash creating a maelstrom of leaves and debris that moves in stuttering, impossible patterns through the distorted time field. Agents rappel down thick black ropes, their descent jerky and unnatural as they pass through layers of temporal distortion. "Link up now," David shouts over the mechanical thunder, clipping his rope to Danny Foster's harness. The boys move with rehearsed precision, connecting themselves in a chain, with Marcus and Lisa positioned in the center. "Wait," Lisa calls out, fumbling with her radio. "I need to document this." Her words cut off as the first federal agent's boots hit the ground. He moves like he's underwater, each step deliberate and measured. When he speaks, his voice comes outstretched and warped. "Federal ... temporal ... anomaly. Response ... team. You are in a restricted ... zone." "They can't move normally in the field," Ryan observes with clinical detachment, "but they're adapted for it somehow." Marcus looks closer at the agent's equipment and feels his stomach drop. The man wears some kind of specialized suit with sensors embedded throughout the fabric, and his helmet displays readings that shift constantly. This isn't a first response. This is a team that's been preparing for exactly this situation. How long have they known? Marcus demands. Longer than we thought, David admits, checking the rope connections one final time. But it doesn't matter now. Everyone ready? The linked chain of 7 people approaches the barrier's edge, where reality bends like light through water. Marcus can see the agents moving to surround them, but their movements are sluggish, hampered by the temporal distortions that the boys have learned to navigate through decades of practice. Remember, Jimmy calls back, focus on the person in front of you. Don't think about what's happening to time or space. Just follow the rope. Sam Chun, positioned at the front of their human chain, reaches the barrier first. As his hand touches the invisible threshold, Marcus watches in fascination and horror as Sam's arm begins to age rapidly. The teenager's smooth skin wrinkles. Muscles atrophy, bones become brittle. But then the process reverses, the arm returning to its youthful state, and Sam pushes forward. It's working, Sam gasps. The instability is letting me pass through without full temporal pressure. One by one, they cross the threshold. Marcus feels it the moment he passes through, like stepping into a different universe, where the laws of physics are merely suggestions. His vision splits, showing him multiple versions of the same moment. The meadow in daylight, covered in snow, overgrown with different vegetation, sometimes completely barren. Time layers stack atop each other like transparent sheets. Behind them, the federal agents are coordinating something. Marcus catches fragments of radio chatter, containment breach, temporal cascade, evacuate civilian population. They're not here to study the anomaly, Lisa realizes, her voice tight with fear. They're here to contain a disaster. What kind of disaster? Aaron asks, even as they continue pushing through the distorted space. Their question is answered as the barrier begins to collapse. It starts as a low humming that seems to come from the earth itself, rising in pitch until it becomes almost unbearable. The air around them shimmers more violently, and Marcus sees cracks appearing in reality, literal fissures in space-time that reveal glimpses of other moments, other possibilities. Through one crack, he sees the meadow as it was in 1995, with 6 young boys setting up camp under a clear October sky. Through another, he sees the same space 50 years in the future, overgrown and wild. And through a third, most terrifying of all, he sees nothing, absolute void, as if this place simply ceased to exist. The loop is collapsing, David shouts. Over the increasing din, the temporal prison is breaking apart. Is that good or bad? Marcus calls back. Both, Sam replies grimly. Good if we can escape before it fully destabilizes. Bad if we can't. The ground beneath them begins to crack, not physically but temporally. Marcus watches in sick fascination as years peel away from the earth, invisible layers. A century of seasons flashes by in seconds. Snow falling upward, leaves growing and dying in rapid cycles. The very landscape aging and reverting in endless loops. That's when they see the other prisoners. Through the failing barrier, shapes begin to emerge from different time periods. A Native American hunting party, looking as confused and terrified as Marcus feels. A group of 1950s-era hikers, their period clothing bright against the chaos. What appears to be a family from the 1970s, complete with bell-bottom jeans and a wood-paneled station wagon that phases in and out of existence. Jesus Christ, Lisa breathes. How many people have been trapped here? The anomaly's been active for centuries, Danny explains, even as he struggles to maintain his footing on the fragmenting ground. Every few decades, someone stumbles into the wrong place at the wrong time. The federal agents behind them are shouting into their radios now, their specialized equipment apparently overwhelmed by the cascade failure. One of them produces what looks like a silver briefcase and begins entering codes on a digital keypad. Temporal stabilization device, Alex Webb identifies. They're going to try to freeze the entire anomaly, which would trap everyone here permanently, David adds, including us. Marcus looks ahead to where the barrier's edge shimmers like a mirage. They're only 20 feet from what might be freedom, but the collapsing time field is making each step increasingly difficult. Reality keeps shifting around them. One moment they're walking on solid ground, the next they're wading through what feels like thick liquid. The device is charging, Aaron calls out, looking back at the Federal team. 30 seconds, maybe less. That's when Marcus makes a decision that surprises even him. He unclips himself from the rope. "What are you doing?" Lisa shouts. "Someone needs to stop them," Marcus replies, already moving back toward the agents. "You all keep going, get out of here." "Marcus, no." David calls after him, but Marcus is already running through the collapsing time field, his body moving through layers of distorted reality. He reaches the lead agent just as the man's finger hovers over the final activation switch. The agent looks up at Marcus through his specialized helmet, and Marcus is surprised to see not hostility, but desperate urgency in the man's eyes. "Sir, you need to evacuate immediately," the agent says, his voice somehow cutting clearly through all the temporal noise. "This cascade could affect a radius of 50 miles. We're not trying to trap anyone, we're trying to prevent a catastrophe." Marcus looks back at the failing barrier, where cracks in time are spreading outward like a spider web. Through the fissures, he can see other places, other times glimpses of a world where the temporal anomaly has spread unchecked, where entire cities exist in frozen moments or age centuries in seconds. "If you activate that device," Marcus says, "what happens to the people still trapped inside?" The agent's expression is grim behind his visor. "They'll be preserved, along with the anomaly. It's not ideal, but it's better than letting this spread to populated areas." Marcus looks toward the barrier's edge, where he can just make out the shapes of David and the boys, still linked together, still pushing toward freedom. They're so close, maybe 10 feet from the threshold that might lead them home. The agent's finger moves toward the switch. "I'm sorry, sir. I have my orders." Marcus has perhaps 2 seconds to make a choice that will determine the fate of everyone in the anomaly zone. The boys who've been trapped for 29 years, the other temporal prisoners from across the centuries, and potentially thousands of innocent people in the surrounding area. Time slows around him, not from the anomaly this time, but from the weight of absolute decision. In that stretched moment, Marcus realizes that some choices define not just individual lives, but the nature of reality itself. His hand moves toward the agent's wrist, toward the device that could freeze this moment forever or destroy it entirely. Marcus's hand closes around the agent's wrist, just as the temporal stabilization device begins its final sequence. Numbers count down on the digital display. 10, 9, 8. "Don't do this," Marcus pleads, his grip tightening. "Give them a chance to escape." The agent's eyes behind his visor are filled with genuine anguish. "Sir, you don't understand the scope of what we're dealing with. Our model shows 73% probability that this cascade will reach Casper within 6 hours. That's 40,000 people. 6:05. Through the chaos of collapsing time, Marcus sees David and the boys at the barrier's edge. They're so close to freedom that he can see normal daylight beyond the threshold, real sunlight, not the shifting, uncertain illumination of their temporal prison. But something's wrong. Instead of pushing through to safety, they've stopped. 4:03. They're not leaving, Marcus realizes with growing horror. They're waiting for the other prisoners. Indeed, David Brennan has positioned himself at the barrier's threshold, 1 foot in each reality, And he's calling back to the confused temporal refugees scattered throughout the collapsing field. The Native American hunting party, the 1950s hikers, the 1970s family, all of them moving toward his voice with the desperate hope of people who've been lost for far too long. He's trying to save everyone, the agent says, and Marcus hears grudging respect in the man's voice. But there isn't time. The cascade is accelerating. 1. Marcus releases the agent's wrist and steps back. The device activates with a sound like reality tearing, sending out a pulse of silver energy that spreads across the anomaly zone in concentric circles. But instead of freezing everything in place, something unexpected happens. The temporal stabilization field interacts with the collapsing barrier, creating a brief window of normal time, a pocket of stability in the chaos. And in that window, David Brennan does something that defies every law of physics and psychology that Marcus understands. He steps fully back into the anomaly zone. No, Jimmy Kowalski screams, but David is already moving away from freedom, back toward the scattered temporal prisoners who are struggling through the collapsing field. Everyone link up. David shouts, his voice carrying clearly through the momentary stability. Form a chain, we all leave together, or none of us leave at all. Marcus watches in awe as 6 teenagers who could finally go home after 29 years of imprisonment instead turn around and begin helping strangers from different centuries. Jimmy and Ryan grab the confused 1950s hikers. Sam and Danny assist the Native American hunters, communicating through gestures and shared desperation. The Webb twins help the 1970s family, including 2 small children who look terrified but determined. Incredible, the federal agent breathes. They're choosing to risk their freedom for people they don't even know. The silver stabilization field is already beginning to fluctuate. Whatever window it's created won't last long. But David's gamble seems to be working. The mixed group of temporal refugees is forming a human chain, linked by hands and rope and shared hope. How long do they have? Marcus asks. The agent checks his instruments. Maybe 90 seconds before the field collapses completely. After that ... He doesn't finish, but Marcus can see the grim calculations in the man's eyes. That's when Lisa appears beside them, having somehow made her way back through the chaos. Marcus, what the hell are you doing? We need to go. I had to stop the device, Marcus explains quickly. It would have trapped them forever. And now they're trying to save everyone, Lisa says, watching the human chain form in the distance. All of them. Even the people who've been trapped for centuries. The federal agent speaks into his radio. Command, we have multiple temporal refugees attempting coordinated extraction. Requesting immediate medical and support teams at grid reference 7 Alpha. Medical teams? Marcus asks. If they make it out, they're going to need help, the agent explains. 29 years of temporal displacement. We don't know what the psychological effects will be. And the others, some of them have been trapped since the 1800s. The human chain is moving now, a line of people from across 2 centuries helping each other toward what might be freedom. David leads from the front, still looking like the 24-year-old scout leader he was in 1995, but carrying himself with the wisdom of someone who's lived through decades of impossible experiences. They're not going to make it, Lisa says, watching the struggling line of refugees. The field is collapsing too fast. She's right. Marcus can see the temporal distortions spreading outward from the edges of the stabilization field. Reality is beginning to fray again, and the refugees still have 30 yards to cover before reaching the barrier's edge. That's when Marcus makes his second life-defining decision of the night. Agent, he says, can that device create another pulse? The man checks his equipment. One more, maybe. But it would drain the entire power cell. We wouldn't be able to contain the anomaly if it continues spreading. How far has it spread already? The agent's expression grows grim. The cascade effect has already affected a 3-mile radius. We've evacuated 2 ranches and a camping area. If it continues expanding... Marcus looks at the struggling line of temporal refugees, at David Brennan risking his hard-won freedom to save people he's never met, at 6 boys who've chosen compassion over escape after 29 years of imprisonment. Do it, Marcus says. Give them the time they need. Sir, if the anomaly continues spreading, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, those people need our help. The agent hesitates for a moment, then nods grimly. Command, this is Alpha Team. Initiating second temporal stabilization pulse. All units prepare for possible cascade expansion. He activates the device again, and another wave of silver energy spreads across the anomaly zone. This time, the effect is even more dramatic. A sphere of perfect temporal stability that encompasses the entire human chain and extends all the way to the barrier's edge. In that bubble of normal time, David and his impossible rescue mission begin to run. They move together like a living organism, the chain of refugees from different centuries, united by shared desperation and hope. Marcus can see their faces clearly now. The wonder in the Native American hunters' eyes as they experience technology they've never imagined. The confusion of the 1950s hikers as they try to process a world decades beyond their understanding. The terror and determination of the 1970s family protecting their children. And at the center of it all, 6 boys who should be middle-aged men, choosing to be heroes instead of victims. 30 seconds until field collapse, the agent announces. The human chain reaches the barrier's edge with 15 seconds to spare. David steps through first, then begins pulling the others across the threshold between impossible and real. One by one, they cross over, the boys who've been his charges for 29 years, the strangers he's risked everything to save. With 5 seconds remaining, the last person, one of the small children from the 1970s family, crosses the barrier. The temporal stabilization field collapses, and the anomaly zone implodes with a sound like the universe sighing in relief. When the silver light fades, Devil's Canyon looks exactly as it should, a normal wilderness area under an October dawn, with no sign that it ever held prisoners from across the centuries. But scattered across the meadow, looking dazed and confused. And finally, impossibly free, are 18 people who've been lost in time for anywhere from decades to centuries. And sitting in a circle around the cold ashes of a campfire that burned for 29 years, 6 boys and their scout leader begin the long journey back to a world that's moved on without them. The first rays of dawn illuminate a scene that will challenge every assumption about what's possible. 18 temporal refugees sit in small groups across the meadow, each person struggling to comprehend a reality that's shifted around them like sand. Marcus approaches David Brennan, who sits apart from the others, staring at his hands as if he can't quite believe they're real. The scout leader looks up as Marcus draws near, and for the first time since this impossible night began, David looks. His actual age not in appearance, but in the weight behind his eyes. 29 years, David says quietly. We experienced every day, every hour. But we also didn't age, didn't change, didn't grow. How do you explain that to people? Marcus settles beside him on the damp grass. You don't have to explain anything right now. You just have to adjust to being free. Free. David tests the word like he's trying to remember its meaning. I've been responsible for those boys for 29 years, watching them cycle through the same 3 days, trying to keep them sane, keep them hopeful. And now, he gestures toward where Jimmy Kowalski is attempting to explain smartphones to one of the Native American hunters, using slow gestures and careful English. Nearby, Ryan Martinez sits with the 1970s family, helping the parents comfort their children who are overwhelmed by the sight of helicopters and men in strange uniforms. Now they have to learn to live in a world that's completely different from the one they left, David continues. Jimmy should be 45 years old, married, maybe with kids of his own. Instead, he's trapped in a 16-year-old body with 45 years of memories. Lisa approaches, carrying a medical kit provided by the federal response team. The psychologists are on their way, she tells them, specialists in temporal displacement trauma. Marcus raises an eyebrow. That's a real specialty? It is now. Agent Carson Marcus has finally learned the man's name says as he joins their group. This isn't the first temporal anomaly we've encountered, just the largest and longest lasting. The government's been quietly studying these phenomena for decades. How many others? David asks, classified, but Carson glances around to make sure his superiors aren't listening. 17 confirmed sites worldwide. Most are small, a few hours here, a day there. Yours was unprecedented in both scope and duration. Sam Chun walks over, his teenage face serious. Agent Carson, we need to discuss the others. The Native Americans, the family from the 70s. They can't just be processed through normal channels. Carson nods grimly. We're working on protocols. The family will be the easiest there. Disappearance was documented, and while they'll need extensive support, they have social security numbers, birth certificates. The others ... double quotes he trails off. Marcus understands the problem. How do you integrate people into modern society when they have no legal existence, no documentation, no way to prove they belong to this century? There's something else, Aaron Webb says, approaching with his twin. They've been talking quietly with the other temple refugees, and both boys look troubled. Not everyone wants to stay. What do you mean? Lisa asks. Alex Webb explains. 2 of the Native Americans and 1 of the hikers from the 50s. They're asking if they can go back. They say this world is too strange, too frightening. That's not possible, Carson says immediately. The anomaly has collapsed. There's no going back. Is there? David asks quietly. You said there were other sites. Other temporal anomalies. Carson's expression grows uncomfortable. Theoretically, yes, but the psychological trauma of another displacement might be preferable to the trauma of forced integration into an alien world, Sam finishes. We've had 29 years to observe the outside world changing. They haven't. For them, it's like waking up on another planet. The ethical implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Do people have the right to choose their own time period? If someone can't adapt to the modern world, is it more humane to help them find a different temporal anomaly, where they might be more comfortable? Danny Foster, the youngest of the scouts, sits down beside them. Despite his 14-year-old appearance, his voice carries decades of accumulated wisdom. There's something else we need to discuss, our families. The group falls silent. In all the chaos of escape and rescue, Marcus realizes they haven't fully addressed the central human tragedy. 6 boys who've been mourned, buried, grieved over. Parents who've spent nearly 3 decades learning to live with loss. Siblings who've grown up, married, had children of their own. My parents are in their 70s now, Jimmy says, joining the group. I've watched them through the barrier, seen them age, seen them struggle, seen them finally find peace with my disappearance. What happens when a 16-year-old son shows up at their door? My mother remarried, Danny adds. She has another family now, 2 stepchildren who don't even know I existed. Ryan's voice is barely above a whisper. What if they don't want us back? What if we're just reminders of the worst tragedy in their lives? Lisa pulls out her phone, scrolling through contacts. There are protocols for this too. Grief counselors, family therapists who specialize in impossible reunions. The government's thought about these scenarios. But thinking about it and living it are different things, David points out. Agent Carson receives a message on his radio and steps away to respond. When he returns, his expression is carefully neutral. I need to inform you all that this incident is classified at the highest levels. Everything that happened here tonight, everything you've experienced, falls under national security restrictions. Marcus feels a familiar anger rising. You're going to bury this, turn these people into government secrets. We're going to protect them, Carson corrects. The world isn't ready for proof that time travel is possible, that people can be trapped for decades in temporal loops. The panic, the exploitation, the religious implications alone. You mean the scientific implications, Sam says sharply. The proof that everything we think we know about physics is incomplete. Carson nods. That too. These 18 people are going to need new identities, careful integration support, lifelong psychological care. That's easier to provide if their stories don't become international headlines. What about the families? David asks. The parents who've been grieving for 29 years? Gradual contact, careful disclosure, extensive counseling for everyone involved. Carson's voice softens. I know it sounds cold, but we've learned from previous cases. Sudden reunions, dramatic revelations, they rarely end well for anyone. The sun is fully up now, casting normal October light across the meadow. Medical teams are arriving, along with what appear to be social workers and psychologists. The impossible night is ending, replaced by the methodical process of dealing with the impossible made real. Marcus stands, feeling the weight of everything he's witnessed. Beside him, Lisa closes her notebook, filled with observations that will likely never see the light of day. What happens to us? Marcus asks Carson. The witnesses? Debriefing, obviously, counseling, and then you go back to your lives with the understanding that some stories are too important to tell. Marcus looks across the meadow at 6 boys who should be middle-aged men, at families displaced across centuries, at a scout leader who chose compassion over personal freedom. These people have paid prices that most humans can't even imagine, and now they're being asked to disappear into bureaucratic protection. But as he watches Jimmy Kowalski carefully explaining modern medicine to a confused Native American hunter, as he sees Ryan Martinez comforting children from the 1970s, Marcus realizes something profound. These aren't victims anymore. They're heroes who've learned that some things, compassion, courage, the refusal to abandon others, transcend time itself. The hardest part of their journey isn't behind them. It's just beginning. 6 months later, Marcus sits in his small apartment, staring at a photograph that doesn't officially exist. It shows 18 people standing together in a government facility, smiling despite everything they've endured. The boys look the same as they did that October night, still frozen at their teenage selves, though their eyes hold depths that no teenager should possess. His phone rings. Lisa's voice, warm but tired. You watching the news? Marcus glances at his television, muted but showing a story about a missing person case solved after 30 years. The details are vague, sanitized, but he recognizes the underlying truth. The Martinez family? Ryan finally got to meet his nephew. Kid's 26 now, older than Ryan appears to be. Lisa pauses. The reunion went well, all things considered. Marcus nods, though she can't see him. Over the past 6 months, he's received similar updates. Jimmy Kowalski's careful reintroduction to parents who initially thought they were seeing a ghost. Sam Chun's slow integration into a family that had learned to function around his absence. The Webb twins discovering they have a sister-in-law and 3 nieces who share their birthday. Not all the reunions have been successful. Danny Foster's mother, remarried with a new family, made the painful decision that contact would be too disruptive for everyone involved. He sends birthday cards through intermediaries, but they've never spoken directly. What about the others? Marcus asks. The 1970s family is doing better than expected. Kids are resilient, even when they're adjusting to smartphones and social media. The parents are struggling more. The world's changed so much that they feel like aliens in their own country. Marcus knows the feeling. Since that night in Devil's Canyon, he's felt displaced in his own life, carrying knowledge that isolates him from everyone who wasn't there. And the Native Americans? Lisa's voice grows quieter. 2 of them took the government's offer. They're living on a reservation in Montana, working with tribal elders who've been briefed on the situation. The historical knowledge they carry stories. From the 1800s, first-hand accounts of events we only know from books. It's invaluable. The 3rd one? Still asking to go back. Still believes there's a way to return to his own time. Marcus understands that too. Sometimes the future feels too heavy, too complicated, too far removed from everything that once made sense. Marcus. Lisa continues, there's something else. Agent Carson called me yesterday. They want to offer us positions. What kind of positions? Consultants for the Temporal Anomaly Response Team. Full security clearance, good pay, chance to help other people who get caught in similar situations. Marcus considers this. After returning from Devil's Canyon, he'd tried to resume his normal life, but everything felt hollow. His search and rescue work, once his passion, now seemed trivial compared to rescuing people from impossible situations. His obsession with finding the missing boys had been replaced by an obsession with helping the found boys adjust to being alive. Would we work with them directly, the boys? David specifically requested us. He says we're the only outsiders who understand what they went through. Through his window, Marcus can see the mountains in the distance. Somewhere out there, according to classified reports, are 16 other temporal anomalies. 16 other places where people might be trapped, experiencing impossible things, waiting for someone to find them. What did you tell Carson? I told him I'd think about it, but Marcus ... I think about them every day. Those boys, that scout leader, all of them. They gave up their chance at normal lives to save people they didn't even know. The least we can do is help them build new lives. Marcus closes his eyes, remembering David Brennan stepping back into the anomaly zone, choosing heroism over personal freedom. Send me the paperwork. After hanging up, Marcus opens his laptop and navigates to a secure email account that officially doesn't exist. 3 new messages wait for him. The first is from Jimmy Kowalski, now attending college through a carefully crafted identity that explains his unusual background as a private education situation. His letter is cheerful, detailing classes and friends and a slowly developing romantic relationship with a girl who thinks his old-fashioned manners are charming. Between the lines, Marcus can read the struggle of a 45-year-old mind trapped in a 16-year-old body trying to navigate modern teenage social dynamics. The second message is from Sam Chun, who's become something of a celebrity in physics circles, under his new identity as a prodigy with unusual insights into temporal mechanics. He's working with government scientists to understand other anomalies, using knowledge gained from 29 years of studying their prison from the inside. His letter mentions nightmares but also excitement about finally being able to contribute to the world's understanding of time itself. The third message is from David Brennan. Marcus, I know Agent Carson has made you an offer, and I hope you'll accept. We need people who understand that some things are more important than protocol, or politics, or even personal safety. I've been thinking a lot about choice lately. We had choices in that anomaly zone. We could have escaped first and left the others behind. We could have accepted that some people were beyond saving. But we chose differently, and I think that choice matters more than all the impossible physics that trapped us. There are other people out there, caught in other impossible situations. They need someone to find them, someone to believe their stories, someone to help them find their way home. The government has resources and technology, but what they don't have is understanding of what it means to be lost in time. You and Lisa understand. You believed us when believing was impossible. You helped us when helping defied logic. And when we made the choice to save others, you supported that choice even though it put everyone at risk. The boys are adapting. Slowly, Some days are harder than others. Jimmy jokes that he's the only college freshman with 45 years of life experience. Ryan says modern physics textbooks read like science fiction to someone who's lived outside normal time. The twins are fascinated by how much music has changed, and Danny is learning to navigate a world where his childhood friends are now adults with children of their own. But we're alive, Marcus. We're free, and we have you to thank for that. If you decide to join the TART program, know that you'll be saving people who never expected to be saved. Finding people who never expected to be found. It's not easy work. Some of the other anomalies are far stranger than ours was, but it's important work. Time, we've learned, is more fragile than anyone imagines. And sometimes, the only thing standing between someone and eternity, lost in the spaces between seconds, is another person willing to reach out their hand. Thank you for reaching out yours. David. Marcus closes the laptop and looks again at the photograph of 18 people who shouldn't exist, standing together in a place that shouldn't be necessary, smiling despite carrying burdens that shouldn't be possible. He picks up his phone and dials Agent Carson's number. Agent Carson, it's Marcus Chun. About that offer? Outside his window, the mountains hold their secrets. But somewhere in those peaks and valleys, other impossible things are happening. Other people are trapped in situations that defy explanation, waiting for someone to believe their stories and help them find their way home. Marcus thinks about campfires that burn for decades, about choices that transcend time itself, about 6 boys who chose heroism over safety and changed his understanding of what it means to be human. I'm in, he tells Carson. When do we start? The answer comes immediately. There's a situation in Colorado. Family of 4 missing for 6 years, local time. But according to our instruments, they've been gone for 60 years. We could use someone with your experience. Marcus looks one more time at the photograph. At David Brennan's face, young but wise, marked by impossible experiences, but still committed to helping others. Then he closes the file and begins packing. Some stories end with people finding their way home. Others end with people choosing to help others find theirs. Both, Marcus realizes, are ways of defining what home really means. The mountains keep their secrets, but some secrets are meant to be found. And sometimes, the most important discoveries happen not when we find what we're looking for, but when we choose to help others find what they've lost. In Devil's Canyon, the temporal anomaly is gone. But in a small meadow beside a stream, 6 graves remain, empty monuments to missing people who were never really missing at all. And in facilities around the world, people who've lived through impossible things work quietly to help others who are living through them now. They understand, as only the lost can understand, what it means to be found. Time moves forward, as it always has. But for some people, the path between lost and found leads through places where time itself forgot to follow the rules. The important thing isn't understanding how such places exist. The important thing is never giving up on the people trapped inside them.